I would love to just start by getting a sense of not only your career, but what drew you to this world in the first place. What sparked your love for cinematography?
Um, well, I've always been really interested in metaphor, and how imagery and paintings and photography basically, because I come from a photography background, is the basis of metaphor and telling a story with either a single image or many images. And the thing that really drew me to moving images, it's the fact that you could do so much more, with can change the lighting, you can create camera movement, you can change the mood. It's almost like you drive into a whole other world.
Mhm.
And, I used to get that when I was looking through the still camera, but it's fleeting and it's a moment. And so there's something about being able to be drawn into the world through the viewfinder, which is why I think it's really interesting now that most people use monitors because it's not the same kind of feeling. I mean, I remember that very first time when I looked through the viewfinder for the first time and thought, oh my God, it's like the world falls away around you and that becomes the world. And I
Mhm.
think that that's, lacking now. I think that people are missing that kind of magical experience of, looking through the viewfinder and creating a world.
Yeah,
It becomes
absolutely.
much more removed and intellectual than it does emotional.
Yeah. Well, as you have headed into the world of cinematography from the world of stills, is that something that has stayed with you over the years? Do you still return to stills photography? Does that inform your work as a DP, or is it kind of separate for you?
No, still very much informed by work. I mean,
Mhm.
I still look at a lot of stills, you know, um, I have a lot of books on photography and very intrigued by what photographers are doing now. I mean, back in the beginning when I first started doing, motion picture cinematography, I was really interested in an artist whose name was Matt Mahern, who comes from the still world, and he was doing these really beautiful emotional images in something white in darkness, and it was slightly out of focus, but it had this great sensibility to it. And then
Mhm.
he's the one who actually started experimenting and using swing and tilt lenses, which I was
Okay.
also really, really interested in because, I wanted to be able to change the image plane. I wanted to be able to change the image within itself
Mhm.
rather than just it being what it is, and challenging how we see things and how we see the world, and very much about point of view. And how do you create a sense of point of view rather than just illustrating something or just photographing something. So, for me, it's been much more of an emotional engagement
Mhm.
than it has been just an intellectual one.
Right. So, can you speak a little bit about your journey as a cinematographer over the years? Just how long did it take you to feel like you got to where you wanted to be in your career?
I've been very, very lucky because my work was recognized very early on. So the very first documentary I ever shot, which was shot in Cambodia, when we were the only Americans in Cambodia at the time,
Mhm.
um, became a half an hour documentary made by Ellen Bruno, way back in 1986, I think it was. That's when we actually shot in Cambodia. And it ended up getting a lot of um, attention worldwide.
Yeah.
I know that Alan Davio saw it in Sundance. They created the jury award at Sundance for that film, and we won the Student Academy Award. Um, and it won 25 international awards all over the world. So people knew a little bit of me then. And then when I did Swoon, which was the first feature I ever did, it was actually supposed to be a 40-minute art film. And we ended up shooting it in 14 days. And it became a film which really struck people. It was in black and white. It was a period film. and I won the best cinematography, dramatic cinematography at Sundance for it. And that kind of put me on the map.
Hmm.
And, I've been very fortunate. My work has been recognized in many, many ways. And for that, I think I was very grateful because it gave me opportunity.
Yeah.
And it gave me an opportunity that other people may not have necessarily had. So
Hmm.
it was able to kind of forge a path early on, for a lot of other people, not only young women, but other men in rethinking cinema and challenging the medium
Hmm.
and and not so much caring about, oh, where's my career going, but more about what's the work I'm doing,
Yeah.
what's the next project, how are we doing this, how can I make it so that it's visceral, so that it's meaningful, so that it has metaphor in it rather than just being a series of images. And that's something that people miss a lot. It's that, they think, oh, well, this is such a cool shot, but the shot doesn't mean anything. So who cares? For me, it's about creating the blocking in concert with the shots and creating meaningful images, and that the shot actually contributes to part of the story. It's just not some empty shot and let's do something cool. I
Yeah.
mean, that has its place, of course, but it's not the kind of filmmaking I was ever really interested in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that that makes a lot of sense, especially knowing that, your career, you've been able to do a lot across, different mediums, being able to do documentary and narrative. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you about was how you see those two informing each other.
Well, documentary really informed everything that I did early on and today. I mean, anybody who starts out in documentary, of which many cinematographers actually have done documentaries, what it does is it forces you to think on your feet, and it forces you to walk into a room and immediately suss out, where can I put the camera that's going to best tell the story? Or where
Mhm.
can I start if I'm hand holding or wherever that I can best tell the story from? And where can I go to? So as a documentarian, I always would want to know what does the director want to say? What is the intention here?
Mhm.
What's the story you think you want to tell? Like, why are we here in this event and why are we even shooting this? So that tells me as a cinematographer what I'm looking for. So documentary also, I mean, it has so many ways that it trains you as a thinker,
Mhm.
not only a cinematographer, but as a thinker. Like, how can I cover this in a way that the editor can actually cut it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a key thing. I mean, if you just shoot everything on wide shot, the editor is never going to be able to cut it.
Right.
Maybe they can, but it's a stylistic choice. So there are certain decisions that are made by the cinematographer in documentary um, that should be overseen by the director. Some oftentimes are not, but
Mhm.
part of what informs those choices are what is the meaning of what we're trying to say? What is this? What's the story we're trying to tell?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that, that's a really great way to look at it, and it's interesting to see the parallels and the overlap between those two worlds of documentary and narrative. On a little bit of a different bent, I wanted to ask you, you're the fifth woman who joined the ASC. I wanted to ask about, what it's been like being a part of the ASC, being one of the first women, and just your time in the society.
Well, I think I got into the ASC, it was 1998, I think, which is a really long time ago. It was in the last century. Um, but back then, people's ideas about women in the film industry were very different.
Hmm.
And people would say to me, well, oh, how did it feel like joining the bastion of, male dominance in the film industry? Because at that point, there was less than 1% of cinematographers were women.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I didn't see it that way. Journalists would want to try and pigeonhole you into thinking that, you know, sort of playing the party line that they wanted to say that the ASC was, was misogynistic.
Mm.
And I have to say, I didn't find that. I suppose years and years ago, because it was a club and it was mostly men or all men, it was hard for them to imagine having women in it because it was clubbish. But I have to say, since my time there, from the beginning, I was welcomed with open arms, people really excited by seeing my work. Um, they respected my opinion. And I have to say, cinematographers are generally non-competitive. We help each other. We're a peer group. And you don't find that as much in other crafts in the industry. I have to say it's particular to cinematographers.
Right.
We do help each other. And I could call anybody up in the society and they would call me back and help me. Or I know that, after I've had certain films come out, like Eternal Sunshine or Summer of Sam, I got many calls from people asking me, oh, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? Or cross process reversal, or, how did you do, shift and tilt or whatever, you know, and we share information. It's about us helping each other as colleagues, So I always felt that. And I have to say that, it was an incredibly supportive environment. I mean, the industry is really changing fast now.
Yeah.
And, the ASC is an organization where people care and where we together are trying to move through the next phases of what's going to be AI and everything. And, so, it's also been very helpful to have great leaders. Shelley is a great president. He really is trying to bring people together in the spirit of goodness and in good team spirit. And, that's a good way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about, just how much cinematographers like to be of assistance to each other and how it's a kind of collaborative community, I wanted to ask, like, are there any particular, whether it's DPs that you worked with early on in your career or directors or anyone that you feel like has been a big mentor to you in your journey?
Oh yeah, many people. I would say one of the first was Caleb Deschanel. Caleb, basically wrote my recommendation to get into the ASC, as well as I think Alan Davio.
Mhm.
Um, but Caleb has always been somebody who, has been there. He's tried and true. He's, a solid person. And also, he and I always connected on an intellectual basis.
Yeah.
So I would say Caleb. Um, and there's so many people. I'm friends with Bob Richardson, but obviously, you know, he's not that much older than I am,
Yeah.
but but his work has really been incredible. I mean, he, is an incredible artist. You
Yeah.
know, um, who else can I say? I mean, there's so many people who are directors. Marty, of course, is somebody who's been really inspirational to me and a colleague, who I've worked closely with. Um, I would say Sandy Sissel.
Mhm.
Sandy was somebody who was an early champion of mine, who, I could call her at any time, any hour, who's just one of those people. I mean, really, Sandy was the pioneer. Sandy did Solomon Bay. That kind of opened things up a
Yeah.
lot. And then she was doing incredible things like Master and Commander. She was the second unit DP on Master and Commander, which is incredible. And then when it won the Academy Award, she wasn't even mentioned. And I thought, oh my God, she's the one who did all the work with all the madness and craziness,
Yeah.
making that film an action picture. But so, there's many people along the way. I would say Pat Mitchell, who is not a cinematographer, who was a person that when I first started shooting way, way back when I was doing little videos, and she was the producer, and she would hand me my batteries, and it was just Pat, myself, and a sound person going
Wow.
out and making these small, and then she became the head of Turner Broadcasting, and then the head of the Paley Center, and then she's the mover and the shaker now out there. So these are people, there's role models from the movie industry, but also role models from the real world.
Yeah. You have had such a storied and prolific career, and to hear about all the people along the way in different capacities that have really had a relationship with you that's really stuck is always encouraging to hear about from the very beginning, finding these collaborators who, really help bring each other up along the way. Um yeah, I mean, do you have any advice you'd like to give to younger cinematographers starting out on their journey?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's a changing landscape very quickly. I would say the thing that doesn't change is your inner voice, and I think it's really important that people listen to their inner voice because that's your true voice. And even when I've been working, no matter I'm trying to make decisions, whatever, I mean, that was the thing. It's like it wasn't so much career, trying to develop my career as it was trying to do different projects or come into, find different projects or be with people who have different interesting projects so that and listen to my inner voice about what did it say for me. So, I've read many scripts,
Hmm.
but some scripts I'm like, I don't, people are like, oh my God, there's this script. And I was like, well, it doesn't mean anything to me because
Yeah.
what does it want to say? So, listening to your inner voice on set is also incredibly important. People
Hmm.
would say to me, well, how did you know how to do that? And I'd say, you know, the little person sitting on my shoulder told me, and that's your inner voice. So that I would say is the most important thing in
Hmm.
life, in your career, and whatever you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's simple, but also very hard to remember some of the time, so
Yeah.
it's always a good reminder to have. Well, yeah, I mean, this has been a very just broad scope look at your career and, everything. But is there anything that I haven't asked about, any projects, mentors, people that just looking back you would like to give a shout out to?
Well, I mean, Eternal Sunshine is a film that everybody really, is so excited about, even still. And the thing to remember about that film and the reason why it's resonant, and this is the thing that kind of continues with people, is the universality of that story.
Hmm.
That people can connect with that story, and everybody has broken up with someone at some point in time, and so the sense of, you know, pain and betrayal, but also the sense of longing and desire to be with someone and get back to it, even though it's terrible for you, is very real and it's universal. And those are the kind of projects that endure and that last, and I'm really glad that I was part of that film. It was not an easy film to make because,
Hmm.
we had lots of challenges along the way. But, I'm really glad because people are so moved by it all over the world. Yeah.